Hey guys. Tonight we wander into a space that time forgot. The air doesn't move here. There's no breeze, no ticking, no erosion. Just stillness, thick and endless. You step carefully, your feet landing on ground that neither creaks nor cracks. Everything here has been like this for so long it has forgotten how to decay. Ahead of you is a marble column, tall, straight, and cracked, just once down the middle. But that crack doesn't widen. It stays suspended like a breath held too long. Ivy snakes around its base, but the leaves never curl, never brown. They simply remain, like they were painted in place. You breathe in, but the air doesn't quite fill your lungs. It's too clean, too untouched. It carries no scent, no history, only presence. Like being inside a snow globe the gods forgot to shake. And then you see her, a woman in a robe that might have once been white, now faded into a sort of soft, timeless beige. Her skin glows with the faintest shimmer, like sunlight on a wax seal. She's seated on a stone bench which has no dust. Nothing here ever collects dust. She doesn't look surprised to see you. She only says, "Finally." Her voice is like a bell underwater, clear but slightly muffled by something ancient. You realize you're looking at Eos, the dawn. Yes, that Eos, goddess of the morning light, herald of Helios, the one who opens the gates of the east each day so the sun can ride out. She gestures for you to sit beside her, and you do. The marble is warm unnervingly, so as if it's been absorbing the same sunrise for thousands of years. She looks at you, not unkindly. You came looking for immortality, didn't you? You don't answer. You don't need to. She already knows. Eos leans back, her golden hair, what's left of its brilliance, spilling behind her like honey that refuses to harden. Everyone thinks it's a blessing, she says, until they hold it too long. She doesn't speak in riddles. She speaks like someone who has already said this 1,000 times and knows she'll say it 1,000 more. You ask her what she means. She laughs. Once, quietly. "I fell in love with a mortal," she says. "Of course I did. We all do eventually. You think we wouldn't, but gods get bored, and bored gods are dangerous." You nod. That tracks. Tithonus, she says more to herself than to you. That was his name. Skin like cinnamon. Voice like a river. He told me once that he never wanted to leave me, so I made it happen. She pauses. I asked Zeus to grant him immortality. I didn't ask for youth, just immortality. You let that hang in the air. Even you know where this is going. He aged, she says. He wrinkled. His joints collapsed. His spine curled. But he didn't die. She looks away from you, toward nothing in particular. He begged me, at first just to hold him, then to stop the pain, then to let him go. You ask her what she did. I kept him, she says, and her voice goes tight. I tucked him away in a chamber behind the sunrise. fed him honey and thyme, sang to him even when he couldn't respond. She swallows. Eventually, his words ran out. He shrank, folded into himself, until the only sound he made was this dry, papery fluttering. You feel a weight settle in your chest. She doesn't cry. She hasn't cried in millennia. There's no water left for that. You've heard the story, I'm sure, she says. They say he became a cicada, forever humming, never sleeping, never dying. Just a shell with wings. You ask if she still hears him. She smiles softly. Every morning, she says, that sound the world mistakes for dawn's song, that's him, crying for a death he'll never get. You sit in silence for a while. The ground hums beneath you, not unpleasantly, more like the quiet tremor of something ancient trying not to break apart. Eos places a hand on yours. You think eternity means freedom, she says. It doesn't. It means repetition. You want to argue, to say that memory would keep it interesting, but she beats you to it. Even memories fade, she says. Even the perfect ones, especially the perfect ones. She leans closer, almost conspiratorial now. You know what no one tells you. Immortals forget. You raise an eyebrow. She nods. You live long enough, your brain starts trimming the edges to make room, to survive. One day you wake up and don't remember the first time you said a name, or the last time someone looked at you like you mattered. You just keep moving forward, thinking maybe this day will feel different. You ask if it ever does. She doesn't answer. Instead, she picks up a small object beside her. A sunstone, smooth and orange and warm. Tithonus gave me this, she says. Or maybe I gave it to him. I don't remember anymore. She presses it into your hand. You'll need it. You start to ask why, but she's already fading. The air around her becomes brighter, not in a blinding way, more like a deepening dawn, the kind that stretches shadows, long and thin, and promises warmth, even if it never arrives. You stand holding the sunstone. It pulses faintly, like a heart that doesn't know when to stop. Eos's voice reaches you one last time, a whisper curling around your ear. Immortality isn't a gift, she says. It's a room with no exits. And then she's gone. Only the crack in the column remains, and the air that never moves. You walk for a while. The path doesn't shift exactly. It just keeps going, like the world is politely pretending to be endless for your sake. The sunstone in your hand gives off a steady warmth, not hot, just present, like the memory of someone's hand, long after they've let go. There's a sound now, faint and rhythmic, like wings brushing parchment. It's not music, not quite, but it repeats in a way that's almost comforting. You follow it, because of course you do. That's what you're here for. Following sounds that shouldn't be there, and finding the people who forgot how to stop making them. Eventually, the air thickens, not with mist or smoke, but with silence, pressed into layers, as if something very old once screamed here, and the echo wrapped itself into the rocks. You step through a grove of olive trees that look more like sculptures than plants. No breeze, no rustle, just still leaves and gnarled limbs bent toward the sky in a gesture that could be prayer or surrender. And then you find him, or rather, what's left of him. He's perched on a low stone pedestal, knees drawn up, arms wrapped around his legs. His skin is translucent, not ghostly, just fragile. His eyes flutter beneath half-lowered lids, and his mouth twitches every few seconds as if trying to remember how to speak. This is Tithonus. You already know, but the confirmation hits you in your chest anyway. He hums softly, and the sound echoes into the trees. Not a tune, just a frequency, a presence. You step closer, careful not to disturb whatever delicate spell has preserved this form for countless centuries. He doesn't move, but his voice, if you can call it that, rises again, like the chirr of a cicada. You sit nearby, just outside the radius of his quiet vibration. He doesn't acknowledge you, but somehow you know he knows you're here. There's a scroll at his feet, frayed at the edges, brittle, mostly unreadable. You gently reach for it. He doesn't stop you. The first few lines are gone, but one word remains halfway down still. Not much to go on. But then again, what else do you need? You look back at Tithonus, and for the briefest moment his eyes focus. Only for a second, then gone again. You whisper his name. His lips part. A sound comes out. One syllable. More. More. You ask him to repeat it, but he's already slipped back into that low hum. You try again. More what? This time, nothing. You sit beside him, unsure whether to feel pity or awe. This man, once golden, once loved by Eos, once envied by mortals, has become the oldest whisper in the world. Not because he did something terrible, not because he wanted too much, but because he asked the wrong question with the right amount of love. Historians still argue whether Tithonus actually turned into a cicada, or whether it's just a metaphor, an ancient way of explaining that someone became too thin for the world, too stretched, too echo. But you're here now, and you know. It wasn't a metaphor, it was a warning. You think of how many people wish for immortality with clenched fists, believing it to be a ladder, not a loop. You wonder how many get what they ask for, and how many, like Tithonus, live just long enough to stop asking. You place the sunstone beside him. Just a little warmth, maybe a reminder, maybe an apology. You stand. He hums again, a little louder this time, and you walk away not because you're done, but because you know he'll still be here. Forever, mid-hum. Forever, still. The path bends gently now, like it knows you're tired of abrupt turns. There's a quiet here that isn't absence, it's more like a hush, the kind that falls right before a story is told. The olive trees fade behind you, replaced by tall grasses the color of moonlight. They don't sway. There's no wind. But you hear something faint and regular, like a breath that belongs to the entire landscape. You follow it, because you're starting to understand that in this place every sound is a person who waited too long to be remembered. Eventually, you reach the edge of a cliff that overlooks a valley flooded in silver. Not actual silver, of course, but moonlight so thick it might as well be metal. And there, lying on a smooth, flat stone in the middle of it all, is Endymion, sleeping. Of course, you almost say his name aloud, but something stops you. It feels wrong, like shouting in a cathedral or touching glass in a museum. His face is utterly peaceful, not frozen, not slack, just serene, like he's on the very edge of waking, but chooses not to. And above him, hovering not quite close enough to touch, is Selene, the moon herself. You don't see her at first. She doesn't shimmer or glow like you'd expect. She's quiet, gentle, draped in a robe that trails behind her like mist over water. Her hair is long and dark and pinned back with what might be stars, though they flicker faintly as if they too are remembering how to shine. She turns toward you, surprised, not alarmed, just mildly startled, like someone who's been in her own head too long and forgot the world still moves. "Oh," she says, "you found us." You nod, because what else can you do? She gestures for you to come closer, but you don't. Not yet. You're watching the way her fingers hover above Endymion's brow, like she wants to brush his hair back, but doesn't want to wake him. "He's been like this a long time," she says. You ask how long. She smiles softly. Longer than memory. Shorter than regret. That doesn't help much. You ask why, and her smile fades. "I loved him," she says simply. "Still do." You glance at Endymion. He doesn't age, she continues. He doesn't feel pain. He doesn't hunger, doesn't dream. I made sure of that. You tilt your head. Dreaming would have hurt him. "No," she replies, "but it might have made him miss being awake." You sit down nearby, cross-legged, careful not to disturb the light that gathers around his form. It clings to him like gauze, softening every angle. Was this his choice, you ask? Finally. Selene doesn't answer immediately. She traces a circle in the air above his heart. "In a way," she says, "he told me he wanted to stay with me forever, that he never wanted to grow old, that he was afraid of death." You frown. "So you put him to sleep?" Selene nods once. Eternal sleep. No aging, no decay. Just stillness. You stare at Endymion's unmoving chest. It doesn't rise or fall, but somehow you know he's alive. Historians still argue whether I did it for him or for myself, she murmurs. They paint me as a romantic or a tyrant. Depends on the century. You ask her what she thinks she was. She laughs, not cruelly, just with the sound of someone who's heard every version of the story and stopped believing any of them. "I think I was lonely," she says, "and I mistook silence for love." That hits something in your ribs. She kneels beside Endymion again, smoothing the folds of his robe with hands that tremble ever so slightly. He was beautiful, she says, still is. But now that beauty doesn't change, and I've learned beauty that doesn't change is just a picture. You don't speak, there's nothing worth saying. Selene lifts her eyes to the sky where the moon should be, but there's only darkness. I used to rise with the night, she whispers. Now I hover, I linger, I wait. You ask if she ever thought about waking him. She smiles sadly. Sometimes she says, but he'd hate me for what I did, and I'd have to hear him say it. She places a small object beside his hand, a pebble smooth and polished, shaped like a crescent moon. A token, a confession. You realize she does this every night. The objects change, but the guilt doesn't. You want to ask one more thing, but Selene lifts a finger before you can speak. No, she says. He never says anything in his sleep. And that's the most tragic part, because it means there are no dreams left between them. Only memory, only stillness, only the echo of a love that never learned how to move forward. You stay there a little longer, watching them. The moonlight pulses gently, as if trying to hold on to something just beyond its reach. You pick up the crescent pebble when Selene isn't looking, not to steal it, just to remember how it felt. You leave Selene behind not because you want to, but because she no longer notices you're there. Her entire world hovers around a single sleeping man, and it's clear you've already stayed longer than most. The crescent-shaped pebble rests cool in your palm, like it's storing a love that never thawed. You don't pocket it. You just carry it, like guilt that isn't yours, but fits anyway. The path shifts again. This time it's steeper. Crags of broken stone jut from the ground, like the ribs of something ancient and long dead. You climb them slowly, carefully. Every few steps you hear the faint clink of metal, dull, repetitive, not menacing, just tired. Like someone trying to finish a task they stopped believing in ages ago. At the summit you find him. Chiron. Yes, the centaur. Only he's not quite how you imagined him. No galloping thunder, no proud mane in the wind. Just a man, half horse, half human, seated beside a fire that doesn't burn, staring into coals that haven't glowed in centuries. His posture is slumped, but not defeated. He looks like someone who's held too many roles and forgotten which one is real. Mentor, warrior, healer, immortal, miserable. You step closer. The air around him smells faintly of pine sap, crushed herbs, and old bandages. He doesn't glance up, but he says, "I thought you'd come sooner." You pause. "Did you know I was coming?" He shrugs. Everyone comes here eventually, especially if they're looking for the cracks in immortality. You sit across from him, cross-legged on a rock that still holds the warmth of some long-forgotten sun. Chiron picks up a small vial from beside the fire pit. It's empty. He turns it over in his hand like he's hoping it'll offer a different answer this time. I can't die, he says flatly. Not unless someone trades me for it. You nod. You remember the myth. The poisoned arrow. The unbearable wound. The pain that didn't kill, but didn't stop. I taught Hercules, he says, as if checking the memory for dust. He was sorry, you know, for the arrow. You ask what it felt like. Chiron smiles not fondly, bitterly, like being made of fire wrapped in your own skin. You wince. I could have healed anyone else, he mutters. Anyone, but not myself. Not this one. You ask why. Because the gods like irony, he says, and because sometimes the price of being wise is knowing how long pain can last. He looks at you then, and his eyes are older than the stars. You mean that, literally, he was born before most of them had names. Historians still argue whether Chiron's wound was physical or symbolic, whether it represents the limits of knowledge or the cruelty of fate. But here now you see that it doesn't matter. Pain doesn't need a metaphor to be real. Chiron tosses the vial into the fire pit. It doesn't make a sound. They let me trade, he says, eventually. You remember the story. Prometheus chained to a rock, an eagle gnawing at his liver. Eternal punishment. Zeus said one immortal could swap places. Chiron explains. I said yes before he finished the sentence. You ask if he regrets it. Chiron chuckles. What's there to regret? A clean end is better than a clever eternity. You sit with that a moment. Then you ask the question that's been sitting at the back of your throat. What if someone asked to be immortal now? With full knowledge of the cost, Chiron leans forward. His hooves scrape the stone with a dry rasp. They always do, he says. Even after all the stories, they still ask. They still think it'll be different for them. You look down at your hands. The sunstone still glows faintly. In one, the crescent pebble cool in the other. Do you want to die, you ask? He doesn't answer right away. Then I want to rest. You don't press further. That feels like the most honest answer he can give. He rises slowly like a mountain remembering how to move. You see the wound now etched across his lower flank. It doesn't bleed. It never has. But it glows faintly like a brand made of sorrow. He steps away from the fire into the darkness beyond. Not toward death, just away from the spotlight. You stay a little longer, letting the stillness wrap around you like a shawl. And when you finally stand to leave, the wind picks up. For the first time since arriving, the world exhales. The wind fades again as you descend the slope, now smoother, now moss-covered. Your steps feel heavier, but it isn't fatigue. It's memory, the kind that clings like damp wool. You carry the warmth of Eos, the silence of Selene, and the ache of Chiron. Together, they've settled into your bones, not loud, not urgent, just there. The path winds downward into a grove so thick the canopy swallows most of the light. Trees lean in close, their bark pale like bone, their branches curved like fingers that once knew how to grasp. And at the center, half submerged in a pool of still water, you find her, Psyche, or what remains of her. She's seated in the shallow's legs, curled beneath her arms, resting on the surface as though the water's tension alone holds them up. Her hair floats around her head in lazy spirals, dark and glossy, and her gown clings to her like a second skin. Not sensual, not dramatic, just quiet. You know the story. Everyone does. The mortal who loved a god. The girl who wasn't supposed to see his face. The candle, the wax, the betrayal. You say her name. Her eyes flutter open. You're late, she says not unkindly. You sit at the water's edge. It's shallow but bottomless. The reflection it offers is perfect, but something about it feels dishonest, like it shows you as you want to be, not as you are. Do you know where he is? She asks, already knowing the answer. You hesitate. Cupid, she smiles. I don't call him that. You nod. Of course she doesn't. She closes her eyes again. He doesn't visit anymore. Not since they made him a symbol, a brand, a holiday. You blink. You mean Valentine's Day? She says flatly. You almost laugh, but her tone stops you. He used to be wild, she continues, untamed, terrible. But now he's a cartoon, a baby with wings and a bow. They sanitized him. You ask if she misses him. She opens her eyes, stares at the water. Every day, she whispers. But I also know he loved the idea of me more than the whole of me. That's the trouble with gods. They fall in love with symbols, not people. You glance at the pool. Your reflection doesn't blink when you do. Did he ever try to find you? You ask. Oh, yes, she says. But only when I was gone. That's how it works. You become more valuable once you're out of reach. You want to ask more, but she's already speaking again. I went through every trial, she says. Venus hated me, sent me on quests, boxes of beauty, journeys through the underworld, and for what? A kiss. You ask if it was worth it. She tilts her head. Historians still argue whether my myth was about devotion or delusion, she says. Whether I'm a symbol of perseverance or just another mortal girl chasing something that couldn't be held. You ask her what she thinks. She reaches down into the pool and lifts a handful of water. It slips through her fingers without resistance. That's what it felt like, she says, trying to keep love alive. You sit quietly with her for a while. The cicada song from earlier is gone. In its place is something softer, a breeze, maybe, or the sound of wings beating underwater. People say love is eternal, she says. They think that means it never ends. But it also means it never rests. You watch her lower her hand back into the pool. It's hard being remembered as a story, she continues, especially one where your agency was a plot twist. You nod. You've read enough myths to understand. Psyche doesn't ask you to stay. She doesn't ask you to go either. She just turns her gaze upward toward a sky blocked entirely by branches and exhales. You reach into your pocket and place the crescent-shaped pebble at the edge of the pool. It fits there, Not because it belongs, but because it understands. You stand slowly and walk away, leaving Psyche exactly where you found her, half remembered, half divine, wholly alone. You continue walking, and for a while there is no one. No gods watching from behind trees, no whispers from still water, no footsteps, but your own. The path has turned smooth again, unnaturally, so, like it's been worn down, not by travel, but by time itself, leaning its elbow against this spot and thinking too long. You begin to wonder if you've slipped into the empty cracks between stories, the part of mythology that never made it into scrolls or vases, the part where no one remembers the name, so no one gets worshipped, blamed, or forgiven. That's when you hear the hammering, soft, rhythmic, dull. It doesn't sound like blacksmith work, more like someone gently tapping a stone with another stone. Not to build anything, not to destroy, but just to feel something solid hit something else. You follow the sound, and soon you see her. Io. You recognize her from the way she doesn't recognize herself. She's crouched near a riverbed, tapping a flat rock against a round one, over and over, as if trying to remember the shape of her own fingers. Her eyes are wide but vacant. Her hair is tangled, her feet blistered, and her clothing is less clothing and more the idea of modesty, tattered by centuries. You step closer, and she startles. Not because you're a threat, but because she's not used to being seen. You say her name. She flinches again. I don't go by that anymore, she mumbles. You ask what you should call her. She shrugs. It changes. Goat, girl, ghost. Sometimes just you. You sit beside her. She doesn't stop tapping the rocks. You ask where she's been. Her eyes dart skyward, everywhere. And you believe it. Because Io, the priestess of Hera, turned into a cow, chased across the world by a gadfly, pitied by Zeus, and punished by everyone else, has wandered through more stories than she remembers. And that's saying something, considering she remembers too much. People think wandering is poetic, she mutters, that it makes you wise, but it just makes your feet bleed. You glance at her soles. They're cracked, like old clay. She notices your stare and laughs bitterly. I walked through Egypt once, she says. They built me a temple. You blink. Really, historians still argue if it was mine or someone else's, she said. They always do. Men with scrolls deciding who I was. You ask if she cared. She shrugs again. It passed the time. You watch her press her forehead to the flat stone, her body suddenly small, like a question mark left out in the rain. What was the worst part, you ask, gently. She doesn't answer at first. Then, being aware, you ask her to explain. I wasn't a person, she says. Not fully. Not anymore. I was a story moving through geography. I didn't age. I didn't die. I just walked and walked and walked. You hear her breath catch. I thought I'd stop when I reached the edge of the world, she says. but the world just kept making new edges. You place a hand on the ground beside her palm, down not touching but close. She notices. I stopped trying to get home a long time ago, she says. I don't even remember what it looked like or smelled like, but sometimes when I sleep I dream about grass. The right kind. The kind from before. You don't speak. She lifts the flat stone again and holds it up to the light. It catches a shimmer, and for a moment you see something carved there. A single line, barely legible. Keep going. She chuckles. Wrote that a few centuries ago, thought it was profound. You ask if she still believes it. Io hesitates, then slowly nods. Yeah, she says, because if I stop, then I'll have to ask what all of it meant. You ask her where she'll go next. She looks toward the horizon, blank, muted, featureless. West, she says. Why? Because I haven't in a while. You offer her your sunstone. She shakes her head. Too warm, she says. It might make me remember. You ask if that would be such a bad thing. She closes her eyes. No, she admits. But it would hurt. You stand. She doesn't. You don't say goodbye, neither does she. But the tapping resumes as you walk away. Soft, rhythmic, tired. And in the distance you think you hear the flutter of hooves that haven't been hooves for thousands of years. You step carefully now. Each footfall feels like it echoes backward through stories half remembered, through the breath of gods who no longer answer prayers. The forest thins again, but not into openness. Instead, the path narrows into a kind of corridor, the trees taller and more symmetrical trunks like columns, leaves like a ceiling. It feels built, not grown, deliberate. It's colder here too, not in the way of wind or winter, but in that ancient way you feel when you walk into a room where something important once happened. And at the far end of the corridor, you see her, Ariadne. She sits on a throne carved into the side of a marble cliff, not regal, not triumphant, just alone, like a statue no one remembers to dust. Her dress is Grecian in style, flowing white with gold trim, but it's wrinkled, and one of the straps has fallen off her shoulder, which she hasn't bothered to fix. She's barefoot. A single sandal lies upside down beside her, like it gave up the job halfway through. She sees you, smiles faintly. You made it, she says. I was wondering if I'd be skipped. You sit cross-legged a few feet away. The throne looms above, but her posture doesn't. She slouches legs off to one side, like she's trying to disappear into the marble. You say her name. She nods. Yes, that one still fits. You ask how long she's been here. She snorts. Since he left. And that, of course, means Theseus. You wait for her to bring him up again. She doesn't make you wait long. He said he'd marry me, she says, as if commenting on the weather. After I saved him. After I gave him the thread. After I betrayed my family. You nod. She's told this story 1,000 times. He didn't even wake me, she says, laughing now. Just sailed off. You ask if she ever tried to chase him. She looks down at her bare feet. Where would I have gone, she asks. Back to the labyrinth. To my father. No. The only place left was this one. You look around. The marble cliff. The perfect trees. The silence, How is this Naxos, you ask? Ariadne shrugs. It was. Or it is. Or it might be. Historians still argue whether I died here or became a goddess. Whether Dionysus rescued me or hallucinated me. You raise an eyebrow. And which one do you believe? She sighs, rubbing her temple. I think he found me. I think he loved me. But he also loved wine and chaos and performance. And I was just quiet. After a while, I was background. You think of Selene, of Psyche, of all the women who started as stars and were asked to become shadows. I had dreams, she says suddenly. Did you know that before the maze, before the thread, I wanted to build ships? You blink. Ships. Ariadne smiles. I designed them. Sails, hulls, balance points. I could draw an oar that cut water cleaner than anything in Athens. You ask, what happened to that? She shrugs. It didn't fit the myth. There's a long silence then. Only the occasional rustle of leaves, as if even the trees are listening with sympathy. Love stories, she murmurs, are rarely kind to women who solve problems. You nod. You know the thread was red, she says a little brighter. Not gold, not white. Deep red, like blood or crushed pomegranates. You tell her that's a beautiful detail. Thank you, she says. No one ever asks. You reach into your satchel. You've picked up things along the way. Stones, memories, bits of broken myths. You offer her a small coin, one you don't remember collecting, but now seems to shimmer faintly in your palm. It bears the imprint of a labyrinth. On one side, a sailing ship. On the other. She takes it, turning it over slowly. Maybe I'll build again, she says, not quite convinced. You ask what kind of ship. A fast one, she says, with no room for passengers who lie. You smile. It's the first time someone has made you do that in a while. As you stand to leave, Ariadne doesn't say goodbye, but she does call after you. Don't follow the thread. Make a new one. You pause, glance back. She's sitting straighter now. The sandal is still upside down, but she doesn't seem to care. You walk on. The trees finally thin into mist. Not sunlight, not open sky. Just mist thick and blue-gray like the breath of a god who sighs too often. Your feet press into damp earth, springy and cold, like a sponge, soaked with old myth. And overhead nothing but blur. You're not sure if it's dawn or dusk, and it occurs to you that in this place maybe both happen at once. Then you hear humming. Soft, steady, haunting. The kind of humming that doesn't come from a place of joy, but from the need to fill a silence too wide to survive in. You follow the sound, and there she is. Calypso, seated on a rock that's just too smooth to be natural. Her hair is sea-wet and tangled with what looks like ribbons but might be seaweed. Her hands are occupied braiding, unbraiding, rebraiding, a piece of string that never seems to end. A loop she can't bring herself to finish. She notices you, of course. She notices everything. Islanders do. You've come a long way, she says without looking up. You sit cross-legged across from her. The mist curls lazily around both of you, and the rock she's on seems to breathe, rising and falling, ever so slightly, as though remembering tides that used to crash against it. Is this Ogygia, you ask? She smiles. Was. Is. Might be. You'll find most answers here are shaped like sand true until someone else walks over them. You ask about Odysseus, though you already know. She rolls her eyes. Of course, everyone asks about him. You apologize. She shrugs. Don't be sorry, it's my own fault for loving a hero. You wait. And as with everyone else on this journey, the story starts without being asked. He washed up here like driftwood, she says. Tired. Broken. Not much of a warrior. Just a man who'd been away too long. You nod. You've read the epic. Calypso chuckles. The epic leaves out the snoring, the sweat, the nightmares, but keeps the part where he's irresistible. Funny that. You ask if she loved him. I did, she says, but not in the way you'd think. I didn't love his name. I loved his silences, his hands when he forgot they were weapons. You ask if he loved her. She grows quiet. Historians still argue whether he stayed out of love or convenience, she says, whether he was a prisoner or a guest. You ask what she believes. I think she says slowly, he loved the pause, the in-between. I think I was the calm between storms for him. The mist grows thicker. It pools at your feet. She ties the string into a knot and immediately pulls it loose again. They say I kept him, she continues. But he stayed for years, 7 to be exact. That's not a kidnapping. That's something else. You ask why she let him go. She stares into the mist. Because the gods told me to, she says, and because I knew he was already leaving in his heart. She pauses. It's a strange thing, being someone's escape and someone's prison at the same time. You look at the endless braid in her lap. She catches your gaze and smiles. I've been trying to make something of this thread for centuries. A net, a sail, a blanket, but it always unravels. You ask what it's for. She shrugs. Maybe nothing. Maybe just something to do with my hands while I remember. You offer her the smooth coin Ariadne gave you, but Calypso shakes her head. She needs it more, she says. She still believes in escape. You nod. Pocket it again. Then ask, why are you still here? She gives a small, sad smile. Because when a man sails away from you into legend, you become the footnote. And footnotes don't move. You feel the weight of that. And the quiet that follows is longer than most. Finally, Calypso rises, brushing the mist from her skirt. She steps to the edge of the cliff you hadn't realized one was there, and looks out into fog that could be sea could be sky. Tell him, she says. Who? She turns eyes sharper now. Anyone who leaves. You nod. Then she sits again and resumes braiding. You leave Calypso behind her, humming still vibrating faintly in your bones. The mist lingers for a while, then slowly dissolves into the smell of stone-dry, sun-warmed marble, even though there is no sun. You find yourself walking along a paved path, now each tile etched faintly with symbols you don't recognize, but feel vaguely familiar, like dreams in a language you used to speak. The air shifts again, not warm, not cool, just still. Up ahead is a quiet courtyard, symmetrical, empty, and old. At the center sits a woman on a broken pedestal, as if she was once a statue, and someone whispered her into life. Her dress is pale blue, stiff at the shoulders, and flowing around her legs like porcelain, melted in slow motion. Her hair is pinned in a style that feels ceremonial, even though it's slightly lopsided. She doesn't look up when you approach. She knows you're there. Niobe. She's running her fingers over a carved relief on the pedestal beneath her, tracing outlines over and over again. You realize their names, dozens of them, maybe more. You say hers. She answers without turning. I don't hear it often anymore. Most people skip me. Too tragic. Too obvious. You ask if she minds. She sighs. There are worse fates than being remembered for grief. You sit quietly beside her. She doesn't ask why you've come, because she already knows. You want to know what immortality feels like when it's not given, but inflicted, she says softly. You nod. She presses her hand flat against the stone. They say I boasted, she says, that I dared to compare myself to a goddess. She turns toward you now, finally. Her eyes are dry but heavy, like they've run out of ways to cry. I had 14 children, she says, or maybe 12, or maybe 7. Historians still argue. It doesn't matter. I had children, and they were mine. You nod. Of course. And they were taken, she says, voice flat. All of them. Because I said the wrong thing in the presence of the wrong God. You don't speak. There's nothing to say. It wasn't arrogance, she continues. It was love. That's what no one understands. I wasn't saying I was better than Leto. I was saying my love had numbers. I lived it. I fed it, tucked it into bed. Leto had too. I had a crowd. She lets the words sit there. Then, and now I have silence. You glance at the pedestal again. The names. Faded, chipped, weathered. She keeps them sharp with her fingertips. They turned me into a rock, she says. Literally, a mountain, the weeping rock of Mount Sipylus. Water trickles from the stone, and they say it's me still mourning. You raise an eyebrow. Are you? She thinks for a long time, then shakes her head. I'm not mourning anymore. I'm preserving. There's a difference. You ask what it is. She leans in slightly. Mourning asks for sympathy. Preservation asks for memory. You nod slowly. Even the gods forgot my name. Eventually, she says. But people kept coming to the rock. Tourists, locals, poets, even geologists. I became a landmark. You smile. That's something. She smiles back. Yes, it is. She reaches beneath her robes and pulls out a pebble, pale gray, perfectly round. I've carved each of their names into one, she says. I keep them here. You ask what she'll do when she runs out of room. She laughs, not unkindly. Then I'll start carving on my own ribs. You don't know if she's joking, neither does she. You sit with her longer than you sat with the others. Maybe because she doesn't demand anything from you. Maybe because she already knows what it is to be left without explanation. Eventually, she speaks again. Do you think I deserved it? She asks, not looking at you. You pause. Choose your words carefully. I think you say that gods often confuse vengeance with balance. She closes her eyes. Good answer, she murmurs. You rise. She doesn't. But as you leave the courtyard, the air shifts again. Just slightly. And for the first time you notice that her shadow cast by no sun stretches all the way to the names on the stone. All of them. Every single one. Your feet carry you now through silence, not just the absence of sound, but the kind of silence that feels old, like it knows things, like it's heard everything already and doesn't expect you to say much. The path fades from stone to soft moss, and the sky above shifts to twilight, a color between bruised plum and faded ink. There are no birds, no trees, just the hush of a place that hasn't been visited in a long time. And then you hear the dripping, steady, measured, like time marking its passage, one drop at a time. You follow it to a cave. Cool air spills out in a soft draft, and inside the walls glitter faintly, not with gold, but with the sheen of minerals too old to be precious. The air smells of water and iron and stories. In the center of the cave sits a woman beside a spring, not bathing, not praying, just waiting. Echo. She doesn't see you at first. Her attention is turned inward, listening to something only she can hear. Her fingers play along the water's surface, making ripples that disappear too quickly to be satisfying. You call her name. She blinks, looks up, smiles. Or maybe that's just the way her face rests now, like someone forever on the verge of responding. You're the first voice I've heard today, she says softly. You sit across from her. There's a strange beauty to her presence, flickering uneven, like watching moonlight through water. You ask if she remembers the curse. She nods. Of course. I was talkative, too talkative, and Hera didn't like that. She mimics Hera's frown. It's exaggerated, funny even. You smile and she sees it. Don't feel bad, she says. I was annoying, but I was also helpful. I distracted Hera so Zeus could sneak around. She pauses, which, now that I say it out loud, sounds less noble than I remembered. You both laugh quietly. You ask how long it's been since she spoke something original. She shrugs. Long enough that I've started stealing from the wind. It makes sounds I can almost mimic. Almost. She leans forward, lowering her voice, like she's sharing a secret. Sometimes she says I try to whisper before someone else does, just to see if I can trick the curse. You ask if it works. She grins. Once I thought it did. But then the mountain said the same thing back. She draws a line in the dirt beside her. I don't mind it as much anymore, she says. The echo. It's company, at least. I always know what it'll say. You tilt your head. Doesn't that get lonely? Her smile falters just a bit. It's better than silence, she says, which is what I was left with when he ran away. You know who she means. Narcissus, the boy who couldn't love anyone but himself, who looked into the water and found the only person he thought worthy of affection, who heard her voice and mistook it for flattery, then fled when she couldn't stop repeating him. I didn't love him, she says. Not really. I love the idea of being seen. She watches the spring ripple again. Sometimes, she says, I still hear his voice, not in the water, but in the silence between echoes. It's silly. You tell her it's not. She nods grateful. You reach into your satchel again and pull out the coin, the one with the labyrinth and the ship. You place it gently beside her on the stone. She stares at it for a long time, then whispers, coin. And a second later, the cave answers coin. She giggles, and for a moment she sounds like someone who hasn't been punished by words. You ask if there's anything she wants to say, something original, something no one will repeat. She considers, then leans in close and very quietly says, You're kind. The cave stays silent. You smile. She smiles back. For once the echo does not respond. The cave mouth narrows behind you, leaving echo to her watery sanctuary. As you walk back into the strange, not quite twilight, the world feels quieter, not in absence, but in respect. Like every myth you've touched has taken a breath and held it waiting to see where you'll go next. Your feet tread a path of gravel, now crunching softly under each step. The mist is gone. The trees are gone. There's only a dry, sloping hill speckled with olive trees that look half alive and half asleep. And there, at the crest, sits a man. Not a woman this time, but a myth of loneliness nonetheless. He sits on a low stone back, straight eyes fixed on the sky, not the heavens, just the clouds. His robes are clean, but plain, a soft brown with faded patterns. His beard is neatly kept, though silver-streaked, and his hands rest on his knees like they're used to waiting. You recognize him before you reach him. Orpheus. He doesn't look at you, but he speaks. I told her not to look back, he says. She did. You settle beside him. You say nothing yet. You've learned that the lonely don't need prompting, just presence. He nods slowly. I thought I could charm death, he says. Thought I could convince Hades himself. And maybe I did. Maybe I did. But that last condition, don't look back, he finally turns to you. What kind of love doesn't look back? You don't answer, because you don't know. He looks down at his hands. They say I played the lyre so beautifully that stones wept, he says, that trees leaned in to listen, that rivers paused. He chuckles softly. None of them stopped her from dying. You ask if he blames himself. He doesn't hesitate. Yes. You ask if he blames her. He hesitates longer, then says, also, yes. The wind picks up a little. It smells like dry leaves and old parchment. He leans back against a low stump. They ripped me apart. In the end, he says casually. The Maenads, Bacchic frenzy. Not a good way to go. You frown, but you're here. He shrugs. Pieces of me. Echoes. Memory fragments. Enough to sit and think, apparently. You glance at his lyre. It's lying beside him, strung with threads of something too fine to be gut or string. They shimmer, faintly like moonlight, trapped in spider silk. Sometimes, he says, I play songs no one hears, not because I want to be alone, but because I can't risk anyone answering. You nod. The silence is part of the music now. He adds after a beat, historians still argue whether my tale is tragedy or warning, whether I failed because I lacked faith, or because faith was never enough. You ask what he thinks. He smiles. I think myths are written by the survivors, and the survivors like rules. You reach into your satchel and offer the coin again. He lifts it delicately, inspects the ship, then the labyrinth. This, he says, this is the kind of story I'd write music for. Then, gently, he returns it to your hand. You'll need it later, he adds. Trust me. You ask him if he ever hears from Eurydice now. His voice softens. Only in dreams. But I don't play for her anymore. You nod. Because sometimes silence is the only thing the dead can answer. As you rise, he reaches for the lyre. Not to play, just to hold. And as you walk down the hill, you swear you hear a single note follow you. Just one. Clear. Unfinished. The path winds downward now, and the sky above begins to fragment patches of color, giving way to constellations that blink on and off like uncertain thoughts. You're no longer walking through one world, but between them. Time feels grainy here, like you're brushing your fingers across an old mosaic and hoping the pieces will stay in place. You don't know how long you've been walking, but suddenly you feel it, that chill, not cold, just empty. And then you see her, not in a cave, not on a throne, not perched on a pedestal waiting to be remembered. She's just sitting on a flat, cracked stone, combing her hair with a bone-handled comb. The strands fall long and dark over her shoulders, and her dress is black, not dramatic, not flowing, just quiet, like mourning worn down to habit. She doesn't look up, but she speaks clearly. You're here for Persephone. You stop, not because you weren't expecting her, but because it's that voice. The one that echoes inside every myth without needing to raise itself. The kind of voice that could either lull you to sleep or sentence you to dust. She turns her head slightly, just enough to meet your eyes. Not cold, not cruel, just tired. People always ask the same thing, she says. Was it a kidnapping? Was it love? Did I eat the seeds willingly? She smiles. You'd think the gods would leave at least one mystery untouched. You sit beside her. The stone beneath you is warm, but not from sunlight. From memory. You ask if she misses the surface. She looks upward at nothing. Sometimes, in spring, when the air smells like oranges, you ask why she stays. She runs the comb once more through her hair, then sets it down gently. Because someone has to keep the dead company. You nod. She leans back on her hands and stretches her legs like someone who's not often allowed to be casual. I was young when it happened, she says. Daughter of Demeter, goddess of flowers, collector of soft things. She picks up a wilted petal from the stone beside her. And then one day the ground opened. You ask what it felt like. She thinks, like being chosen for something I didn't audition for. Her voice grows softer. But Hades wasn't a monster. He didn't roar or threaten. He just offered. You ask what he offered. A throne, she says. A role. A name that would never be forgotten. She looks down at her palms. I said yes eventually. After the seeds. She catches your expression. Yes, she says. I ate them on purpose. You ask why. Because I was tired of being someone's daughter. She pauses. And because I knew that if I left without a tether, no one would believe the choice was mine. Historians still argue whether Persephone was a victim or an architect of her own story, whether she was coerced or complicit, whether the myth is a tragedy, a love story, or a seasonal metaphor. But you don't ask her any of those questions, because she's already told you. You sit in the silence that follows, and she picks up the comb again. You offer her the coin, and she smiles faintly. I have no use for passage, she says. I am the destination. She twirls the coin once between her fingers anyway, but I'll hold on to it, just in case. She tucks it into her dress, then stands. Walk with me. You rise, and she leads you through a corridor of withered laurel bushes, their leaves paper thin. The ground crunches beneath your feet, like memory collapsing under too much weight. At the end of the path, she stops. I'll walk you to the edge, she says, but you have to keep going. You nod. She turns and begins to walk back, not solemn, not sad, just steady. And as you watch her disappear into the half-light, you finally understand why the underworld isn't terrifying in the old stories. Because it's quiet. Because it has a queen. The corridor of laurel fades behind you, and the world seems to hesitate. You pause with it standing in a narrow space where even your breath feels borrowed. The air carries no scent now, and the ground beneath your feet has lost texture, like you're walking on shadow, sculpted into shape. And up ahead, something glimmers, not bright, but unmistakable. It's a doorway, freestanding, no walls, just the frame, bronze-aged ornate. Symbols are etched along the sides, and The lintel overhead reads, "Nothing you can understand," yet you know exactly what it says. No one leaves unchanged. You don't touch it. You just pass through. On the other side, a garden, not lush, not alive, but orderly. The trees are pruned into perfect hemispheres. The grass is clipped short. White gravel paths snake through the hedges in crisp geometric loops. And in the center, at a stone table, sits a woman, sipping from a cup that never empties. Ariadne, again, but not as you last saw her. This version wears a crown of stars, literally. A constellation glimmers above her brow like a tiara held by gravity. Her gown is dark blue with gold thread patterns in spirals and labyrinths. Her hands are clean now. No thread, no blisters. She looks up as if she's been waiting, and maybe she has. "Welcome back," she says. You blink. Back. She nods once and gestures to the seat across from her. You sit. She pours from the cup into another wine, dark, fragrant, rich. It smells like pomegranate, honey, rosemary. Try it, she offers. You do. It tastes like memory. So, she says, folding her hands, you've met the lonely ones. You nod, and you've heard their silence. Another nod. She tilts her head. What do you think the gods fear most? You think, then say, obscurity. She smiles. Good, you've been listening. She traces one finger in a circle on the table. I was left on an island, once, she says, and for a long time I thought that was the punishment. She looks up at you. But then I realized I wasn't being punished. I was being rewritten. You ask what she means. The myths changed, she says. I went from clever to castaway, from savior to side character. And in that moment, I understood immortality doesn't protect your story. She leans forward. Only you can do that. You glance at the crown of stars. She touches it gently. A gift from Dionysus. He found me, lifted me into the heavens. Or maybe I lifted myself. The stories disagree. She doesn't sound bitter, just experienced. Historians still argue whether I truly became a goddess, she says, or whether I just found a better ending. You ask which she believes. She considers, then says, why not both? You nod. The wine warms you, not in the body, but in the marrow, in the story bone of you. Ariadne smiles. I wanted you to see all of them, she says. Not just the famous ones, not just the powerful, the lonely ones, the women whose myths were footnotes, whose grief outlived their glory. You say nothing, she continues, because those are the ones who stay, the ones who whisper between the cracks, the ones you feel when you're alone at night, wondering if someone forgot to write the rest of your page. You ask what happens now. She finishes her cup. You walk. You rise. She hands you the coin. Again. But now there's something different on it. The ship is gone. The labyrinth remains. But now there's a star above it. You pocket it. As you leave the garden, the constellation on her brow flares once softly like a wink. And then You are alone again. The garden dissolves behind you, not in ruins, but in retreat, as if it was never meant to last beyond the conversation. Ahead, the path narrows into something older, rougher. The carefully swept gravel gives way to broken marble and wild grasses growing through cracks. You step over the edge of a forgotten colonnade, half sunk in earth. The air smells faintly of thyme and sea salt, though you see no ocean. A low hum pulses through the space. It takes a moment to recognize it. A loom. You follow the sound. It leads to a ruined chamber, once elegant, now hollow. Vines crawl along fractured pillars, and the roof is mostly gone, revealing a night sky stitched with restless stars. At the room's heart sits a tall, thin woman at a loom the size of a door. Her fingers move faster than sight-feeding colored threads into a tapestry you can't quite see yet. She doesn't glance up. "I don't get many visitors," she murmurs. Arachne. You sit across from her, quietly. She works without pause, threading what looks like molten gold into a pattern too complex to follow. "Don't worry," she says. "I won't turn you into anything." You smile cautiously. She adds, "Unless you ask nicely." You chuckle. She does not. Her face is pale, angular, with deep-set eyes that have stared at too many details for too long. Her hands are calloused in a way that no gods ever are. You ask if she still resents Athena. She snorts. "No," then adds, "Yes," then shrugs. "I beat her," she says plainly, "in a contest she insisted upon. I made art. She made threats. She flicks a knot of thread loose with a practiced twitch. They say she turned me into a spider, that I was arrogant, that I forgot my place." She lifts her gaze to yours. "I never forgot my place," she says, voice sharp. "That was the problem. I saw it too clearly." You nod. She continues. "I wove the truth, the gods in all their mess, Zeus and his misdeeds, Poseidon and his storms, Apollo and his lies." The loom clacks again. "I made it too beautiful. They couldn't stand it." You ask what she's weaving now. She leans aside, revealing the tapestry. For a moment it doesn't make sense. Just color and shape. Then it resolves. It's a web. But within the threads, scenes play out, moving, shifting, alive. You see Niobe's crumbling pedestal, Echo's cave, Persephone's silent stare, Ariadne's star-crowned smile, all of them stitched together in shimmering detail. "I've been recording them," she says, "thread by thread. The women who were turned into footnotes. The ones whose stories only get told when they're part of a man's downfall." She gestures to the loom. "This is my revenge." You nod slowly. "It's beautiful." She smiles for the first time. "I know." She weaves a final thread, ties a knot, and cuts the strand with a flick of her fingernail. The whole loom hums in approval. "Historians still argue," she says, "whether I was punished or preserved, whether Athena did it out of jealousy or mercy. You ask her opinion. She shrugs again. The gods don't do mercy, just PR. You reach into your satchel, hesitating, then offer the coin. She waves it away. I don't need it. I built the map. You blink. She leans in. Every path you've taken, every voice you've heard, I laid the thread. It's what I do. You ask why. So someone would finally listen, she says. So someone like you would know these stories didn't end in stone or shadow. They continued. You look down at your hands. You've been carrying them, all of them. You rise. Arachne doesn't stop you, but she nods once like a farewell. And when you glance back from the doorway, the tapestry has vanished. Only the loom remains, still humming, still weaving. You step out from the ruined chamber into a corridor of moonlight and ivy. The stones beneath your feet seem older now, etched with names long worn away. There's a sense of culmination in the air, like breath drawn in just before a whisper, or a final note held in stillness. The myths are no longer hiding from you. They're guiding you. And up ahead in the hush between wind and memory stands the last woman. She isn't seated. She isn't waiting. She is walking. And when she sees you, she doesn't stop, but she gestures for you to follow. You fall in step beside her. She's tall, but not imposing. Her dress is pale gray, layered like clouds about to break. Her eyes are the color of ash after a fire has gone out. In her left hand, she holds a torch, not blazing, just gently glowing. Hestia, the goddess no one ever remembers to name, the one who lights the hearth in every home, but doesn't ask for shrines or offerings, the one whose temple stood in every city, but whose face appears in almost none of the artwork. I've been listening, she says. Her voice is even calm, as though she's been speaking all along and you've only just caught up. To all the ones you met, she continues, to the silences they carry. You nod. They said no one hears them. She smiles faintly, but someone always does. You glance at the torch. That why you carry that? She shrugs. It's not for lighting the way. It's for showing people they were never walking alone. The two of you step through a gate that appears without hinges or frame, just air and purpose. Beyond it, a long table, empty chairs, a hearth glowing at one end. You recognize some of the details. Echo's cave, Echo Ariadne's golden threads, Persephone's pomegranate scent, Arachne's tapestry pattern, now carved into the wood. It's like a room built from every woman you've met, and Hestia gestures for you to sit. You do. She does not. Instead, she places her torch into a bracket on the wall. It flickers, then settles. The light becomes softer, warmer, the kind of light that makes people talk, or listen, or cry without needing to explain. You want to know what immortality feels like, she asks. You wait. She smiles. It feels like being forgotten again and again, and staying anyway. You ask her why she doesn't make herself louder, more memorable. She looks around at the table. Because I'm not the story. I'm the room the story is told in. You sit with that. It makes sense. Of course, the goddess of the hearth would be the last one, the one at the end of every journey, the keeper of the space between endings. Historians still argue whether I ever truly had a personality, she says, or if I was just a symbol home fire warmth. She runs a finger along the edge of the table. They don't realize that those are the most important things. You feel the coin in your pocket grow warm. You pull it out. It's changed again. Now it shows only one thing aflame. No labyrinth, no ship, just a small torch, burning clean and constant. You place it on the table. Hestia nods. Your work's almost done, she says. You ask what that work is. She answers, to carry memory, even the quiet ones. You look at the flame. It dances slightly, then steadies. She steps away slowly, fading into the glow of the hearth. Not gone, just part of the warmth now. You rise and walk on, and behind you, the torchlight stays lit. Your steps are quieter now, not from fatigue, but reverence, as if every sound you make might disturb something sacred. The world around you has softened the edges, dulled by light that isn't quite from the torch, nor the stars, nor anything physical. It's the glow of stories settling into their proper places. You cross a low stone bridge with no water beneath it, just mist and echoes. A voice calls to you, but it's not loud, not commanding, just curious. Do you know my name? You turn. She's standing on the other side of the bridge and wearing a white robe the color of forgotten parchment. Her feet are bare. Her eyes are mismatched, one dark as ink, the other pale as snow. She smiles. It's okay, she says. Most people don't. You pause, then say the name Mnemosyne. She bows her head gently. Very good. The Tithonus of memory, mother of the muses. Forgotten long before the Olympians finished moving in. You step back onto the bridge. She doesn't move closer, but she doesn't need to. I don't appear in many stories, she says, but every story lives inside me. She gestures outward toward the space you just came from. You've met them all, the silent ones, the forgotten ones, the women who were rewritten, neglected, reshaped to fit narratives not their own. You nod. And now she says softly, you're one of the few who remembers. You ask what that means. She sits on the edge of the bridge, legs dangling into the mist. It means you have a choice, she says. You can leave it all behind, let the myths return to dust, or you can carry them, tell them, stitch them into the next thing you build. You look at the coin. It glows gently in your palm, still showing the flame. You won't get glory, she says. You won't get temples. She smiles, wry. But neither did I. You sit beside her, and you ask her a question you've been holding since Echo, since Ariadne, since Hestia. Why are all the forgotten ones women? She's quiet for a moment, then says, because history is built like a house, and someone had to hold up the beams while the others carve their names into the front door. You let that sink in. Historians still argue whether I was ever real, she adds, whether memory was just a concept. She tilts her head towards you. But here you are, sitting beside me. She draws a line in the mist with her toe. It shimmers, then vanishes. You know, she says, when I first gave birth to the muses, I thought the world would become full of stories. I thought people would sing about kindness and gardens and quiet resilience. She smiles sadly. Turns out most people just want blood and lightning. You offer her the coin. She takes it. For the first time in all your journey, someone accepts it fully. She closes her hand around it, and when she opens it again, the coin is gone. In its place is a small olive branch. No fruit, just the leaves. She tucks it behind your ear. That's all I can give you, she says, a memory. You ask if it'll fade. She nods. All things do. That's the point. You rise. She doesn't. She just watches you go. And as you step off the bridge, the mist beneath it solidifies like a dream deciding to become a fact. The air ahead grows warmer, not with sunlight, but with presence. You feel it in your bones first, like an ancient fire rekindling, not a blaze, just embers, soft and stubborn, refusing to go out. You walk through a grove of olive trees, not in full bloom, not quite dead, frozen somewhere between seasons, like someone had pressed pause on their growth. The leaves shimmer with a dusty silver, and every so often one drops soundlessly to the earth. And then you hear footsteps, not behind you, beside you. She appears without warning, not in a flash, not in ceremony. She just is, tall, cloaked in shadow and bronze, a helm under one arm, a spear in the other, her hair tied back in a practical knot, her face unreadable. Athena. You expect thunder. Instead, you get silence. She walks beside you for a long while without speaking. Only the soft click of her armor breaks the hush. Then they blame me for Arachne. It's not an apology, not a defense, just a fact laid down like a sword between you. You say nothing, she continues. They say I was jealous, that I struck her down for being better. You glance at her expecting fury, but her eyes are exhausted. I didn't strike her down, she says. I offered her transformation. You ask if that was kindness. She answers, does it matter? And maybe it doesn't. She walks a few more paces. They call me the goddess of wisdom, she says. But what they mean is strategy, control, victory through intellect. She taps her spear once against the ground. No one wants to remember I was also the goddess of crafts, of weaving, of women's work. You nod. She exhales. I lost that part of myself. The poets shaved it away. The artists stopped drawing it. All they kept was the war. You ask if she misses it. She stops walking, turns to you. I miss being whole, she says. Historians still argue Whether I was born from Zeus's head, fully grown, she adds. But they always forget to ask what it means to never have a mother. You stand together beneath the trees. The silence between you isn't awkward. It's ancient. You ask if she remembers her sisterhood. She looks away. Once she says, but war isolates. It makes you believe you're the only one with a sword. That's how you lose the thread. You offer her the olive branch Mnemosyne gave you. Athena raises an eyebrow. You know what this means, don't you? You shake your head. She smiles faintly. It's the start of peace. She doesn't take it, but she nods once. Keep it, she says. You're going to need it. She vanishes the way she arrived, quietly, unceremoniously, as if gods can only linger for so long in stories they've already exited. You look down. A new path has appeared through the trees lined with burning lamps, one every 10 steps. The way forward is unmistakable now. You follow the path of lamps. Each flame flickers softly, steady, in the breeze that never touches your skin. It's like the world has entered a hush, just for you, holding its breath, while you take these last few steps. The olive branch behind your ear is warm now, like it remembers every name you've heard, every voice you've carried, every silence you've sat beside. The trees thin, the path widens, and suddenly you're back to the place where this began. The white stone plaza, smooth and seamless, stretches out before you. The marble columns now glow faintly from within, not with magic, but with memory, each one inscribed not with names, but with stories. You recognize the carvings. Echo's last glance, Ariadne's unraveling thread, Persephone's pomegranate kiss, Arachne's impossible web, Hestia's steady torch, Mnemosyne's closed eyes, even Athena drawn not in armor, but seated at a loom, her hands still. And in the center of the plaza, the final pedestal, blank, waiting. You step up to it. On the ground in front of you, there is a single inscription. To the one who listened. No name. Just that. You run your hand along the edge. It's smooth and cool, like the surface of water before it's disturbed. The air around you holds something in it now, not weight exactly. Responsibility. And then a voice behind you. Soft. You didn't come here to be a hero. You turn. There's no one there. Only a mirror. A full-length pane of polished obsidian standing upright like a door. But it doesn't show your reflection. It shows the myths. All of them. Living inside you. You. Ariadne's cleverness. In the way you solve problems. Echo's longing. In the way you remember people who've forgotten you. Persephone's strength. In the way you keep blooming through winters. Arachne's fire. In how you keep telling the truth, even when it costs you. Hestia's warmth. In how you make space for others to be whole. Mnemosyne's depth. In how you remember. Athena's burden. In how you fight without letting it define you. They are not behind you anymore. They are within. You reach out, touch the glass. It ripples like water. You step through, and the world shifts. The stories don't end here. They unfold quietly, steadily, every time someone chooses to listen instead of speak. Every time someone rewrites a name that was lost. Every time someone turns the page and refuses to leave a woman behind just because the poets did. You carry that with you. You always have. And as the scene fades into dusklight, you feel the weight of all those myths settle in your chest, not as a burden, but as a quiet pulse, a heartbeat, your own. The transition is seamless. One step through the obsidian mirror, and you're somewhere entirely else, yet everything feels familiar. Not because you've been here, but because they have. The women, the stories, the echoes. You stand in a circular chamber carved out of pale stone. The walls are smooth and unadorned, but every few feet a lantern floats in midair, glowing softly, each flame pulsing to a silent rhythm, almost like breath. At the room's center is a low platform with a single chair, not a throne, not a pedestal, just a seat, waiting. You approach slowly, and then you realize this is not a reward. This is an invitation, a place to sit and listen. So you do. The moment you settle into the chair, the room deepens, not physically, just in presence. Like the stories have gathered, again, no longer scattered, no longer whispering from shadows, but woven together, stitched into something whole. And this time they speak not in grief, but in peace. You close your eyes, and the first story begins not from a voice, but from a feeling. It's Niobe. Still, calm, no longer frozen in stone, but seated beside her children, smiling faintly at the breeze. It's Daphne, roots deep leaves, wide finally breathing, without fear of being chased. It's Medusa, not slain, not weaponized, just walking along a beach at dusk, her hair resting quiet on her shoulders. It's Pandora. Her box open, yes, but emptied now. Hope the only thing left sitting neatly beside her, like a patient companion. They are not begging to be remembered anymore. They are simply being whole. You ask no questions. You have none left. You just sit and watch and listen. And from the soft light of each lantern, you see how immortality doesn't mean being frozen in marble or trapped in tragedy. It means becoming part of the world's quiet daily rhythm. The stories that warm a cup of tea, that hum beneath a lullaby, that settle into the corners of rooms like sunlight that nobody notices but misses when it's gone. You open your eyes. The chamber hasn't changed, but you have. You rise from the chair. There's no fanfare. Just one final corridor, long and lit with dusk-colored light. You walk it slowly, each step lighter than the last. And at the very end, on a small pedestal carved from moonstone, rests a book, its cover blank, its pages empty. You place your hand on it, and the first words appear without ink, without sound, just memory. Not yours, theirs. You begin to write, not as an author, but as a listener. And in the margins, something delicate takes root, a single olive leaf, pressed flat, but still alive. The book remains warm beneath your hand, not hot, never burning, just a soft, persistent warmth, like the quiet press of a palm on your shoulder, or the final flicker of a candle that's outlived its purpose, but refuses to disappear until the room understands what darkness truly is. You don't rush the writing. The words come slowly, not in lines but in shapes, memories, pauses. They arrange themselves like footsteps in sand, just long enough to trace back before the tide washes everything smooth again. You don't need to write the endings. They've already happened. What you write instead are beginnings, what Ariadne might have done with her hands if they weren't always holding the thread, what Echo might have said if someone had just listened the first time, what Persephone might have chosen if seasons were truly hers to command, what Hestia saw from every doorway she never stepped through, what Mnemosyne kept locked away not from malice but mercy, what Athena regretted when no one was looking. Not legends, not epics, just possibilities. Small, steady acts of remembering, laugh, a hesitation, a woman putting on her sandals at dawn. The olive branch behind your ear rustles gently, though there is no wind. A single leaf detaches and floats into the book, tucking itself into a blank page, not as punctuation, but as promise. You close the book, and suddenly the corridor is gone, the chamber, the pedestal, even the story. You are standing again in your own space, wherever that may be, your bed, your chair, your breath, and yet something is different. Not louder, not sharper, just more present, like something ancient has settled into your spine, gently reminding you that you are part of the long, slow tide of memory, that you carry stories now, not for glory, not for retelling, but so they don't disappear. The world doesn't demand action from you. Not right now. It only asks one thing, that when someone's voice falters, when their name begins to fade, when the story turns away from them, you stay. You stay and listen. And maybe one day, someone will do the same for you. And now as the last lantern flickers low, and the echoes quiet into stillness, you can feel the edges of sleep brushing close like the hem of Persephone's gown as she slips into spring, like the sigh of echo settling into silence after being heard. Let your breath slow. Let your muscles soften. Let the stories you've carried drift gently into the corners of your dreams, not as burdens, but as background soft music in a quiet room, the kind that doesn't demand attention, but gives comfort by simply being there. You're not in Olympus anymore. You're not in a cave or a garden or a loom-lit ruin. You're exactly where you need to be, With every inhale, remember the warmth of Hestia's torch. With every exhale, let go of Ariadne's tangled threads, and let the rhythm of your own story carry you forward, calm, steady, and completely your own. No gods to answer to, no myths to escape, just the quiet truth of a body at rest, a mind at peace, and a heart full of names no longer forgotten. Sleep well, gentle listener. You've done good work tonight. You remembered. You witnessed. You stayed. And now you can rest.